to becoming sales wise. This is going to be a really fun 36 minutes, and then we'll have question and answer. So we should have a lot of fun. You're going to be hearing from two of my great friends. The first one is Jeff West. I'll introduce him in a moment. One of the things you'll notice about Jeff, Kim, and my uh, programs is that it's going to always be the focus is always going to be on that other person. Why? Because nobody's going to buy from you or from me because you or I have a sales goal to meet or a quota or need the money or would like the sale to happen. It's going to be because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And we're really going to talk today about how to really position ourselves as that person who they want to see and be in a sales conversation with, who they want to buy from, who they want to be in relationship with, and who they want to refer and recommend to others. So first, oh, Kathy, did yeah, we are recording. Sorry. So thank you. So first up is Jeff West. Jeff is a great friend of mine. Met him first when he was a client of mine 25 or so years ago. Jeff is one of these guys who well, I got to tell you, you always hear these stories about these people who are hugely successful, who were living in a mobile home and they had to be careful because if they stepped wrong, they would actually literally step through the floor. And then they went on to become rich. And well, actually, that's true, literally with Jeff. Before the sales job in which he really brought it home, he was living in a trailer with a wife, two kids. They were as broke as could be. Their goal was to work their way up to being broke. That's how broke they were. And Jeff got into this sales business and he learned and he studied and he applied and he became a very, very successful salesperson, worked his way up to really the leader of an entire group, a state sales coordinator for a Fortune 500 insurance company, led a team of thousands of people, millions and millions and millions of dollars of recurring revenue. This guy is a student of the game of sales as well as a master of the game. But what I really love that he did, it was after he retired that he just had this desire to know something, and that is all the things that he had learned in sales. He knew they worked, but he wanted to know why they worked. And he came up with and developed a concept called fusion points, which I have seen change the game for countless salespeople and sales leaders. He also happens to be a three-time award-winning author, having authored one parable and co-authored two others. Just a fantastic guy to talk about fusion points. Here is Jeff West.
Thank you, my brother. It's so great to be with you guys today. You know, the goal of any sales training isn't so much about just letting you know what the opinion of the person speaking is, but to give you some things you can actually go out and use and apply quickly that will either grow your business or grow your sales career and grow your income. And I love what I do when Bob and Kim and I get together to do these events. These shorter ones, we behind the scenes, we call them the Three Amigos show. The larger ones we call Saleswise Live, the longer ones. But I'm going to teach you some of the things today, like Bob mentioned, that I teach at that event. And then before I get into that, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you know that the most important factor that's going to determine your future success in your business and in your sales career is not the economy, it's not the political landscape. Quite frankly, it's not even your competition. The single most important factor that's going to determine your future success and the success of your company is how the prospects in your marketplace, how your clients, how your team members, your support staff, or the people you want to bring on board make one simple decision. When it comes to their relationship with you and your company, will they persist or will they decide to quit? And so that's what I'm going to forward with you today because it's so important. Because, there's an actual science, a neurological process that occurs in the brain with each and every decision that we humans make. And there are no exceptions to that. And once you understand that science and you decide to work with it, rather than accidentally working in opposition to it, you can influence how some key decisions get made. You can influence how prospects in your marketplace who've never met you will actually make the decision to grant you that first conversation. You'll be able to influence how that same person then decides to become your customer and eventual personal walking ambassador for you and your brand and your company. You'll also be able to influence a decision on how the people you have on your team, support staff, sales team, whatever you're leading, how they make the decision to stay with you or to come on board with you in the first place, and how they make the decision to become super successful and get after what they're going to do. And quite frankly, that same process determines how you'll decide to persist in your career and get great at what you do as well. And I'm not going to take you through all the background science with this today. There's just not enough time. But if you're interested in how decisions get made, Dr. Antonio Damasio is the expert on that. He was a professor at USC, a professor of neurology, and an adjunct professor at the Salk Institute. But basically, here's how it works. Each and every decision that we humans make works pretty much the same way, mechanically speaking. The part of our brain that produces emotion communicates electrically with the part of our brain that processes logic. And together they communicate and they produce the decision about what happens next. And how that decision works out for you and for me or anyone pretty much depends on which emotion they're processing at the time. I'm going to give you an example. Uh, let's talk about negative emotions first. If someone's experiencing negative emotion like fear, distrust, uh, a sense of isolation, um, their brain's going to produce a negative emotion. The first thing that happens is it shoots an electronic signal down into our torso, and it makes us feel different. Our blood pressure rises. We get anxious. There's a lot of things that go in the mix of that. But what happens is we don't like that feeling. To give you an example of it, when you think about the first time you ever saw a scary movie and a scene happened that it startled you, that feeling you had inside, that's what I'm talking about. And of course, with less intense emotions, the feeling is not as intense as that moment was, but that's what I'm talking about. Well, when that emotion is being generated in the brain, and then it communicates electrically with the part of the brain that processes logic, the decision that happens is no. We push back. We don't want to be part of that. It makes us uncomfortable. I call that a collision point. And a collision point makes us uncomfortable making the next step in whatever's going on at the time, where there's a personal or a business relationship, and we tend to blame whatever's in front of us at the time. But the good news is the opposite is true as well. When we experience a positive emotion like joy, love, a sense of trust, a sense of belonging, it also produces emotion. But in this case, the emotion it produces is a positive emotion. And when it shoots that somatic marker, that electric signal down into our torso, we like the way that feels. We want to continue that. We want to repeat it. We want to do that again. It's literally how every successful personal and business relationship begins. And so when that happens, and the brain then, that emotion is communicated over with the part of the brain that processes logic, those two produce a decision that says, yes, I'm comfortable moving forward. I like what's happening here, and I'm ready to take the next step. And it's not like rah rah or anything like that. This is literally the neurological systems of the brain making that happen every single time. And that combination of positive emotion and logic is what I call a fusion point. And by definition, a fusion point is that moment in time where logic and positive emotion merge and ignite, and they create loyalty, they create acceleration, they create commitment, they create an environment where your prospect or your client is comfortable saying yes to what you're asking next. And that's what I'm going to teach you to do. Now, when we're doing the bigger events that we have more time, I'll teach how to intentionally create fusion points in a prospecting process when you're trying to attract new clients. I'll teach how to create fusion points in an actual sales conversation. So not only does the prospect feel good about what's going on, they're really comfortable and want to become your customer. They feel that bond with you. We teach it, and Bob and I teach it on becoming objection proof. There's a lot of things that go on with that. Today, with our time we have, I'm going to teach you how to generate fusion points in your prospecting model. When you're prospecting, there are basically three groups of prospects out there. You've got the first group that knows they have a need. They may recognize your company or your brand. And when you reach out to them, they already know that they have the need. They see you as a solution immediately. And so that in and of itself creates a fusion point with them. They're comfortable saying, yes, come in and talk to me. I want to know more how you can help me on this. Don't you wish they all went that way? The truth is, though, they just don't. Uh, but you've got the second group, and they feel like a sales call, and especially that initial prospecting contact, is an interruption to their day. And they don't really respond positively to it because that interruption, they've got other things going on. And so they don't really care for that contact. For them, that's a collision point, and they push back on it. And then you've got a third group that, quite frankly, they're not thinking about you at all. They're thinking about their day, what's going on. They haven't given you any consideration, but you haven't given them any reason to do that yet. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to make all that happen. Now, if you utilize fusion points in your prospecting process, you will actually increase your results in all three categories, even the first one that loves you already, but especially in the second and third categories. And I'm going to teach you three quick ways that in your sales model, you can generate these fusion points early on. The first, and we're talking about with a prospect who's never even met you yet. The first way you can have a fusion point with them is when you get an introduction from someone else they know, like, and trust. Referrals, I like to call them introductions, but when you get that, basically what you're doing is you're taking someone else they already have a fusion point with, they feel positive about, and you're borrowing that emotion. You're borrowing that credibility when you do that. So that's the first way to do it. The second way that you can create fusion points even before you get the chance to meet the person is by doing something I call priming the prospecting pump. You're basically, I teach people to do three touches with a prospect before you ever even ask for that first meeting. Things like you might look online and find out information. If it's a business to business contact, maybe you find out information about the company, or if it's an individual, about the person, and you try to find something positive that you can send to them. One of the great ways to do it, if it's a business to business situation, is to find positive press about them. Get a Yelp review, do something, print it off, and put a handwritten note on it that says basically, hey, I saw this, I thought it was great, thought I'd send you a copy of it. And then put two extra things on your handwritten note. Number one, I would like to meet you in the future. Number two, please expect my call. When you do that and they receive it, it will create a fusion point with them, and they don't even know you yet. Another way you can do it is by doing something with a service like Mailbox Power or send out cards, where you can literally upload a picture to that company and send them a note out, and with a positive phrase in there, something that lets them know that you're paying attention and you've got something going on with that. And that's a way that you can do it as well. But I always put the note, I'd like to meet you soon. Please expect my call. Another way you can do it is by doing anything that you might think they would find of value. Maybe it's something about the services that you offer, but don't make it about you or the sales. Make it about how they'll benefit once they're taking care of that. And then the third way that I'm going to teach you how to create fusion points before you even meet the prospect, or actually as you're starting the process in the prospecting process, is to use phrases that point out their value proposition. I think most companies, even though they're well-intentioned, have slightly missed the boat on what a value proposition is. Because a value proposition has absolutely nothing to do with your company. It has nothing to do with your product or service. And quite frankly, it has nothing to do with how great you are at what you do. And I know every one of you are great at what you do. Your value proposition basically is 100% about how that prospect's life becomes better when they become your client. They establish a relationship with you that because of it, in whatever way that is. So it's really, when you get down to it, in essence, it's their value from your proposition. And I won't go into too much detail about all this, but in the employee benefit arena, the value to a person, an administrative assistant or someone that I was making a contact with, wasn't about our company. It was what we did that if they needed us, we were there for them at the time. So my phrases would point people in that direction. And that's as much time as I really want to take up today. But I want you to remember, if you're intentional about creating fusion points in every part of your business model, especially in the prospecting part, what you'll find is people who don't even know you yet are willing to take that next step and have that first conversation with you. Anyway, so that's enough for me today, Bob. So I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. And one of the things I love about the way you use fusion points is how you increase the number of people who will see you for a sales conversation. And that's the
Absolutely.
key. The more people you see, the more people who you're going to bring on and who you're going to be able to help with your product or service. Fantastic. Now, before we bring on Kim, just want to let you know, we will be opening this up for Q&A at the end. And so what you'll do is so Kim's going to speak, then I'll speak. And then what we'll ask you to do is just raise your hand, your virtual hand, if you want to ask a question. And we'll show you how to do that here on Zoom afterwards. So please be thinking of any questions you'd like. As we said, 36 minutes of information, but we're gonna do more than that because we're gonna stay on with you as long as you have questions that you want to ask. So Kim Angeli, so Jeff was just talking about fusion points. Kim Angeli is someone I describe as a walking fusion point. You just can't meet Kim Angeli and not just fall in love with her, and everybody just loves her, and you'll see why. Now, I call Kim the $65 million woman, and the reason I call her that is because that's how much she sold year after year in her when she was in back in the day in technology. After she did that, she first she saved her parents' insurance agency from going under because of some yucky things that somebody had done. But then she actually built her own insurance company, and she built that for years until she sold that for a really great profit. One of the things Kim says and this is what I love, it's my favorite Kim Angeli saying, it's not your client's job to remember you. It's your job to be unforgettable. So she's going to take us through one of her ways that she does that. And I have seen her turn people's incomes into multiples by doing this. It is really, really cool. She teaches a methodology not for just for staying top of mind, but more importantly, staying top of heart. I've also never met a woman who has invested so much both time, money, energy into improving herself and always making her business better and making herself better. Kathy and I do a lot of, we pay for a lot of courses and all these things. I know Jeff does too. I've never seen someone like Kim. She's like a fanatic with this stuff. But what she does that's so important is not just invest in herself, she puts it into action. And that's so very key. So without further ado, my great friend, Kim Angeli.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. I love coming on here and just hearing Bob say those words of affirmation. It's fabulous. So I'm Kim Angeli, and I am here to equip you to be unforgettable in 2025. And so I want you to win customers long after you have served the customer, after the transaction. Because being unforgettable in a noisy world is very important right now because there are all kinds of shiny objects. So let me just share a fun fact with you that I shared on a call on Friday that someone was like, wow, I've never heard of that. Did you know that 68% of your customers will leave you or go do business with someone else because of perceived indifference? Okay, let me translate that for you. It means they left because they don't think you care about them, right? There's no relationship. There's no value. And maybe they've forgotten the value you bring. So all of us, how many of you on the call, you can just raise your hand. You don't have to put anything in the chat. How many of you love referrals from customers you love, right? Now we love those referrals. We love them. And we work really, really hard. I mean, listen to Jeff. We're doing all the things before. They're a prospect. We go to networking events. We do all the things to get them on, and we get them in our hand, and we have the little birdie in our hand, and we're like, oh, now I'm going to go chase two in the bush. I'm going to go chase some birds, but I have one in the hand, right? And we're none of us are immune to this, right? So I want to equip you with thinking about 2025 differently and having an ongoing, consistent plan to be unforgettable and be easily referable. Easily referable. So I want you to think about, what if we treated every day like Customer Appreciation Day? Right? A lot of people got onto the gratitude train, choo-choo, in Thanksgiving, and they're slinging notes and they're slinging pies and they're calling their clients because they've ignored them for 10 or 11 months out of the year. So I want you to reframe your thinking that it's not difficult or expensive to put gratitude in your business. It's just doing it a little bit every week. So I want to walk you through a success story with a private client of mine that I've experienced. I've coached him for 17 months. It's not going to take you that long. He just decided he loved working with me. It was supposed to be a 90-day run. I finally let him go in December and said, bye-bye, training wheels off, shoo-shoo. But I want to walk you through taking someone who wasn't consistently nurturing clients, having the bird in the hand and chasing two in the bush, on what was the process that I initially walked him through that will work in any business, your friend's business, any business. We doubled the income in his commercial business, and I want you to wait for this, with his current relationships. Okay? The current birds in the hand, not the ones in the bush. Okay? I want you to think about that. He wanted to have more fun and profitability in his business. And so we implemented my Grow with Gratitude Action Plan. And so the first step in this plan is, what are the names of the little birds? What are the names of the relationships that we want to nurture in the next 12 months? And you will hear me say time and time again in saleswise Live, if you hear any podcasts, if you hear me on YouTube, I'm going to reflect on relationships. I'm not going to ask you to pull a customer list. I'm going to ask you to look at your A relationships. I'm not going to go into my whole stack ranking the way I do this that I honed over the years. I go into that in saleswise Live, but I want you to focus on A relationships first. And I want you to consider, and some of you who are clients of mine are on here, you're just listening again, is I want you to consider that A relationships might not be a customer. They may not have ever paid you one dime into your business. This is part of the relationship ranking. And never fear, after this, if you want the resource for ranking relationships, I will email it to you personally. But we want to know, who are our top relationships? Who are people that know what we do, naturally want to connect us, and they are seeking opportunity to connect us with our ideal fun and profitable customers, future customers. So first you make the list. I suggest you do 25. We don't overwhelm ourselves. Make 25 names and numbers. Get your little dream stealer out and make the list. Look at your LinkedIn, make the list. Then we're going to make a gratitude call. And some of you are like, gratitude calls? I've had many a customer roll their eyes. Oh my gosh, a gratitude call. What is this? Well, first, let me tell you what it's not. It's not a sales call, and it's certainly not a pitch. Because in the go-giver world, pitching is for baseball, not for sales calls. And it's a call that has nothing to do with you. It is actually a conversation. And again, I have scripted out the framework for you that you can use after as a resource. If you want this, you can email me for it. It's actually making a connection. And I do this in my own business. I did one yesterday because I do them consistently on a weekly basis, which I'm going to show you why. And it was not about helping her with something or monetizing the call. I was just having a conversation. seeing how things were going. What does she think real estate is going to look like in 2025? And basically, she says, oh my gosh, can you help me with fill in the blank? Oh, yes, I think I can. Let me get back to you on what that would cost for the team, and I can help you with that project. That was not the intent of the call. The intent of the call was just to have a conversation with my current relationships, to become unforgettable in a noisy world. Did you know that every month you don't communicate with your relationships or customers, you lose 10% influence every month? So we want to make sure people can recall your name to refer you easily and that you're unforgettable, because millions of dollars are lost on a daily basis because of this right here. Think of something you purchased in the last year. Something you purchased. Maybe you purchased, a fence, or maybe you purchased some cabinets. Could you, if you bought it this time last year, can you recall their name and could you refer them right now if I asked about the product? Or is it like, oh, who built my fence? Oh, I don't know. I cannot look up I don't know in my phone. That's the problem. They can't refer you because no one has a contact name I don't know in this little dream stealer. Nobody. And so you've lost the opportunity to be connected and to be introduced. So I would encourage you to do gratitude calls weekly in your business. Do 10 a week. Let's assume you work 46 weeks a year, you take vacation. If you do 10 a week, that's 460 people that you already know, that you've connected with. They know what you do. You're just reconnecting with them. And if you did that, that's 460, and everybody knows 250 people. Everybody. My mother used to say weddings and funerals are just alike. The only difference is a bride and groom and cake. That's the only difference. Everybody can make the list of 250 people. In fact, when my mother died recently, a couple of years ago, I looked around and I said, well, she's right. All these people were at my wedding 20 something years ago. It's the same list. We just add a few or delete a few. And so basically that influence is 115,000 people in 46 weeks. What would your business look like intentionally placing gratitude, the gratitude action plan in your business? What would it look like in 2026? So again, don't fear on how do I rank clients. I go into detail on this on saleswise Live, but I will give you the resource and I'll give you the gratitude scripts to make the calls, but make sure you do them weekly. And remember, it's not your customer's job to remember you. It's your job to be unforgettable.
Woo. Love that. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
So awesome. And I did put your email in there. A number of
Oh,
people
thanks.
they wanted your script. So email Kim for her gratitude scripts, worth their weight in gold. All right. And so again, in about another 10 minutes, 12 minutes or whatever, we will be taking questions. So if you have any, just keep them in mind and we'll be here for as long as you would like. All right, I'd like to now introduce our third speaker. He's someone I've really known all my life. Me. Thanks very much. Okay, so I want to talk about framing. I'm going to just start by saying this. The frame is the most important part of a sales conversation. Kim was saying we never use the word pitch. No, we never. In Go Giver world, in saleswise Live world, we don't. A pitch is something that in baseball, the pitcher does to the batter, not for the batter. They do it to strike the batter out. No, we have sales conversations because it's really about the other person. What is sales? A sales conversation is simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires and helping them to get it. And so when it comes to the framing a sales conversation, it's so important that if you set the correct frame, you'll be 90% on your way to the desired result. On the other hand, if you don't, and if you buy into their unconsciously set negative frame, you're 90% the other way. So first, what is a frame? A frame is the foundation from which everything else evolves. That's why it's so important. I like to use the example, a non-sales example, which to me was the most powerful example I ever saw of a frame. I'm in a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant several years ago. A little toddler, 2, 3, probably more like 3 years old, I guess, is running around when his parents call him over to their table. He starts to run over. He slips. He takes a spill on the floor. He didn't hurt himself, you could tell, but he was certainly shocked. This was not within his realm of experience. If you're a parent, you know what the first thing he did was he looked at his mom and dad to get their interpretation of the event. What happened happened. He wants to know what's next. Is this good? Is it bad? Do I cry? Do I, right? So I'm looking at this, and you can tell, had the parents reacted and gotten upset and, oh no, my poor baby, he'd have started to cry. Okay. But they didn't. They handled it so wonderfully. They walked over quickly, of course, but very calmly, very serenely. They got down on his level. They looked at him. They smiled. They even laughed and said, "Oh, what a good trick. That looks like so much fun. Can you do that again?" And what did he do? He laughed, right? He laughed. He had fun with it. What the parents did is they set a productive frame from which he could operate. So rather than having to remedially answer his objections, right? His tears and his crying and his with oh no, it's all right. So no, they didn't do. They set the proper frame. So he was acting from that frame. It's the same with a sales conversation. Let's look at a couple of examples. We're going to say in this case, you're a realtor and you're at a home to hopefully take a listing on this home. The husband and wife, they seem to be a little kind of in a strange type of mood, and you don't know why. So you're kind of just observing. And they finally say to you as the conversation begins, we just want to let you know you're the fourth realtor that we've seen to talk about listing our home. The first three before you, they were just obnoxious. They were telling us what we had to do and how we had to list this and we had to do this and we couldn't. They were trying to hard sell us on, and we just want to let you know, we can make up our own minds and we're right. So what happens is they're coming to you from a very defensive frame, from an adversarial frame. This was their experience. Now, I don't know if that really actually happened or not with those, but that's how they experienced it, and that's what counts. Now, if you buy into that frame, that antagonistic frame, right? Now it's you against them. Now it's push against push, and that's never going to have a good outcome. If you buy into that frame, you get defensive and you start trying to justify yourself or saying, well, why you're different and your company's this and you're right. No. Why don't we instead reframe this by saying something along the lines of, first, thank you for sharing that with me. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Mr. and Ms. Prospect, while I've been honored to sell a number of homes in this community, whether or not I'm the right solution for you, we can't possibly know without exploring deeper and really discovering your needs, your wants, what you are looking to accomplish. So please know our conversation is for all of us to really understand that. And if it turns out we're a good fit, fantastic. I'll be delighted to help you. But if not, that's also okay. So what you did is you reframe this from one of adversaries to a situation with two allies or three allies, the husband and wife, all looking to accomplish the same thing, and that is what's in their best interest, because that's the only thing that they care about. Okay, let's look at another one. This is the kind of prospect who is sort of comes across a little bit like a bully, even if they don't really mean to, but they want to kind of feel in control, and they're going to be the one to, and they say to you, just tell me, why should I buy from you instead of one of your competitors? Okay, now that's a kind of, we could call it a bully frame. We could call it an antagonistic frame. But the idea is to make you defensive and have you on the defensive, having to justify yourself. right? If you buy into this frame, you become defensive. You start, spewing information and benefits that he may not even care about. And it doesn't matter anyway, because he knows he's now gotten the best of you. And maybe he's doing it because he knows if he can kind of be in control and bully you, he'll get the best price and he'll get you into a price war with whatever. None of these things. Remember, you never want to sell on low price. When you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource. Okay. So rather than buying into that frame, let's reframe this. So he says something like, so tell me, why should I buy from you or do business with you instead of one of your competitors? So you might want to answer by saying, well, thank you for asking. Actually, at this point, I'm not sure that you should. May I ask you a couple of questions just so I can discover your needs, your wants, what you're really looking to accomplish? That way, we're both in a better position to know if I have really what you're looking for, and we can then both tell if we'd be good working together. So again, what you did is you reframe that from, here and here to equal footing where you're now two colleagues looking to accomplish the same thing, finding out if it's a good idea for you to be working together. So in a very nice, polite, respectful way, you basically said, I'm not going to be bullied. Where I'm a professional just as you are, and we're going to go that way. And so all you've done is you've reframed. The key to reframing is first not reacting to what the other person does, but instead responding to what they do. And this really means mastering your own emotions, being in control of yourself. It's only when we're in control of ourselves that we're even in a position to, take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everybody involved. Okay, let's look at one more frame. And actually, this isn't in a sales conversation, but this is something different. Have you ever been to some local meeting where that was held somewhere, someone sponsored it, where it was like a big, quote unquote, networking meeting? Where everybody was there to get to know each other and hopefully do business with people, all these. We've all seen these before. Most of us have been to something like this. So we're going to pretend you're at something like this, and the person organizing it has everybody, you're all either sitting at different chairs, maybe you're in a huge circle, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to say right now you are let's say you're an insurance agent, you sell property and casualty insurance, okay? Now, the person running the meeting says, so we're going to go around the room, everybody introducing themselves, and everybody can give their 1-minute elevator speech, right? And then she points to the first person, they get up and say their name. They probably go on and on and on because people get nervous during these things. But anyway, here's what's happening. Nobody is listening to anybody's speech, okay? Because everybody is really nervous about delivering their own elevator speech, right? So it doesn't matter how clever it is. It doesn't matter how benefits oriented it is. It can be short and sweet. The person might say, well, I sell X and X with so-and-so company, and we help companies to blah, 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 and that's all it sounds like to anybody. Okay, so everyone's going around the room doing that, and now it's your turn. Here's what I'm going to suggest you do. Sure, you can say your name. I'm Bob Berg with Oceanside Insurance. And then I would say something along these lines. And I've done this with people now for 30 years. Excuse me, 30 years. And the results are astounding. Okay. You say your name, the company you're with, and then you say, while I'm honored to serve the number of people I do in this community, there are so many people on my client list who need the exact products and services that all of you in this room offer. So what I'd like to ask you to do is this. At the end of this session, if you would come over to me and give me your business card and just maybe write down how I can know how to identify a really great prospect for you. that would be fantastic. And I'll make sure to have you as a resource. Now, you have totally reframed this whole thing from you being one of the many people giving the elevator speech that nobody's listening to being the person that now everybody wants to know more about. Okay. Now, you'll be the person who, everybody's bringing over the card, having conversations with you and so forth. That's great. You'll decide who you're going to follow up with, who you're going to follow through with, who you're going to create those fusion point. Well, you've just created a great fusion point, but who you're going to continue to do that with, who you're going to become memorable, unforgettable with, and so forth. But you now have totally reframed that situation and positioned yourself as that go-to person. So we always want to remember that when it comes to sales, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business, we always want to be operating from that frame, okay, that attracts people to you and to your ideas. And as I've been saying for 35 years now, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. Now, I'd love to ask you, if you have questions, to please go to the bottom of the screen to where it says react. We like to say respond, of course, instead of react, but here it says react. So click on react, and then you'll notice a bunch of emoticons come up. And if you scroll down, it will have a little thing that says raise hand. Just raise your hand and you'll be in the queue. And why don't we do this, since nobody likes to ask the first question? Let me ask you to raise your hand if you'd like to ask the second question. And then oh no, Kathleen already did it. All right, great. Now, before we go into the questions, Kathy, would you mind putting the SalesWise Live link in the chat? Jeff and Kim and I have a 3-day, it's actually 3 half days, because we don't want it to take up all of your work time over those days, but 3 half days, January 29th, 30th, and 31st, where we're going to let it all hang out and give you everything that we know in terms of helping you to build your business. But you can go to the site and look at everything. So instead of me going through what it's going to cover, that's going to waste a lot of time here, you can do that yourself. But here's what's going to happen. It's going to result in your 2025 being a year in which your business becomes a lot more fun. It just becomes a lot more enjoyable. It becomes a lot less stressful because you always have good, high quality prospective customer and clients to speak with. We want your business to be a joy where people are coming to you, they're introducing other people to you, and that you just feel great about what you're doing while you're making a lot more money. So we hope you'll join us at the 29th, 30th, and 31st. You can email Kim and call Kim even to speak with her about it if you'd like. And we just hope you'll join us and have a lot of fun with us. And by the way, you can ask us any questions about this here if you'd like, but also just ask questions about any of the information that Jeff, Kim, and I shared this afternoon. So Kathleen, let's start with you. Hello.
Happy 2025. Thank you all for doing this. I'm a huge fan of yours, Mr. Berg, and a raving fan of Tim's. So my question is, if you could tell us one thing that you did for your business that gave you the most consistency of success, what would that one thing be?
Okay, so you want to hit myself, then Kim, then Jeff, and do it that way?
Yeah, if all three of you want to ask, that would be beautiful, sure.
Okay. Well, my thing was many, many, many years ago, I started writing handwritten thank you notes every time I met someone who I wanted to establish a connection with. I never knew that was called a fusion point, but I would find out that people would keep those notes, and it might be 6 months, 3 months, a year, 2 weeks, whatever, before I would either do business with them or whatever. But they were actually keeping those notes and saying things like, "You're the only," oh, who was that, right? The Dave Moravik, he just held up. Yeah. And so that was, to me, one of the biggest things I ever did. Now, there's ways to utilize technology to do those that you can follow up, but it's not an either or. There's still, to me, nothing like a handwritten, personalized note. If you'd like to see mine, go to burg.com/note card, and you can see how we do ours. And the way we do it is, you don't send it as a postcard. You put it in a number, you put it in a number 10 envelope. You put a hand stamp on it, oversized stamp, whatever, because you want this to be coming from a friend, not, you don't want to put a machine, machine stamp. And to me, even back in the day before the internet, people still didn't send. No, it was still memorable when you did that. But in today's day of emails, texts, and everything, sending a handwritten, personalized note makes you absolutely unforgettable. Kim, do you want to share the one thing you did then, Jeff?
So I do the thank you notes, handwritten. I have 4 in the mailbox right now. I do stay top of mind. My $1 million secret, I'll just share with you right now why I've made millions of dollars and how I double my business. I thank every person who connects me, whether I've sold them or not. Now, this is a mind shift. So let's say a referral comes into my insurance agency, or today, I'm going to thank the person. I might even put a Starbucks card in there or something of value. I connect. I thank for connections before I make a sale. And a lot of people say, well, why do you do it before? And I'm like, well, because it shows how I'm going to handle the referral that they've entrusted me with. And that really, if you do nothing but thank your A relationships and your connectors, you will be unforgettable.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim. That's wonderful. Jeff, how about you?
In my case, it's actually something I learned from Bob's first book. I think it was Endless Referrals, and it was how to focus on the benefit to the other person. And so inside my existing group of clients, I called the owner of one of the businesses and I said, I'd like to come spend about 20 minutes with you. I want to pick your brain about something, if that'd be okay. And of course we did. And the first thing I did when I sat down was I actually thanked him. You know, I make a living, I feed my family by having companies do business with me. You do that. I so appreciate that. But I'd also like to return the favor. You know, I'm running into tons of people out there every single day, and I have a lot of contacts. Can you take a minute to tell me what I need to be asking them to know if they're a good prospect to send your way? And he took off his glasses. I wrote this into the storyline of my first book, The Unexpected Tour Guide. He took off his glasses, he sat them on his desk, and he said, I'll answer your question, but I got to tell you something first. And I said, what? He said, thank you. And I said, for what? I haven't done anything yet. And he said, you actually have. He said, I've been in business 30 years. Salespeople are always asking me for referrals. You are the very first to ever ask me how you could refer business to me. Thank you. And we discussed it, and he told me what to do. I actually had a couple of companies I knew immediately, so I picked up my phone. I called them and I said, hey, I want to ask you something. I told them about the relationship. Says, I would like to give him your information to contact, but I'm not going to do that without your permission. Would that be okay? They said yes. I said, great, I'll get it to you. And I hung up. And also, what it did, it was such a fusion point with him, both in me doing that for him, but also teaching him how I wanted him to call the people he was going to refer to me. So it was perfect.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. I love that. George McGillivray from Scotland. How are you? Why did I just sound Australian there at the end? Sorry. Hey, George, you're on mute. There you go.
Sorry about that. Here I am. I have a question, first of all, for Jeff. I mean, it's really interesting. Years ago, if I heard you talking first about brain and left brain and logic and all that sort of thing, I thought, oh, they're making sales far too complicated. But the way you've explained that and the fusion point was absolutely brilliant. What I wanted to ask is, when did you first realize, you know, sales is not just sort of trying to flog something, taking money off them, but using the power of the brain? At what stage of your sales career did that become clear to you that that was important?
Great question.
Thanks, George. That is a great question. In my case, it was probably very early, but I didn't know what was happening. But guys, I'm one of these people. I literally have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on my education and sales over the years. Studied with Brian Tracy, learned about the psychology of sales, all of these things. And that's when I learned that that something was working when I focused that way, and it was the psychology of sales. But I really developed fusion points and understood it more once I retired from the insurance industry And I began to research. I said, I want to know how people make the decision. Number one, how they persist or quit in doing anything that I'm coaching them how to do. And so I began to dive into it at that point. And that's where I really finally understood why everything I had learned before from Bob or Brian Tracy or any great sales trainer, I learned why it worked when I understood the neurology of the brain.
Great
Yeah.
question. Wonderful. Great question. Terrific
And I
answer.
just
Thank
wanted
you.
to say that, remember at a Go Giver meeting last year, we had to choose a word, and I chose freedom. Thanks to Kim, my word for this year is going to be unforgettable.
Ah,
I love it. Thank you for sharing, George.
of
Love
course,
it.
he's already unforgettable to me and to all of us who know him. And there's a lot more people for him to be unforgettable too. So thank you, George. That's awesome. Alex Jeffries, hello.
Hi there.
Alex, there you go.
Yeah, this is specifically for Kim. I was just wondering whether you would advise doing the call in a video format, whether that would have more impact possibly.
So people miss the voice.
Right. Okay.
So even if you leave a voicemail, so my customer actually ended up, and it doesn't have to be you. So let me just say, it's better if it's you, but people miss the voice. When I call client, I heard this today. I have a pest control client, and I'm doing what I preach and teach. I believe you need to be do what you teach. And she's like, oh my gosh, it's so good to hear your voice. Now she gets birthday cards in the mail. She gets my magazine 6 times a year. She gets all the things. But what we've lost in technology is everything is flat. Texting, social media. So you could do a video as one of the ecosystem touch points.
I
But
meant like a video. Sorry, I meant like a video call, not a pre-recorded
Oh, a
one.
video call. Oh,
Yeah,
yes, a Zoom.
face to
Oh, that's
face.
even better. That's
Oh
even
yeah,
better.
that
Yeah, I
text
thought
is
you meant
better.
one of those like blast.
Oh no,
videos.
no, no, I don't do
No, Zooms
pre-recorded
are even
anything.
better. I do those too. Gratitude
Right.
Zooms. I'm
Yeah.
just very mindful of my time. And so I call it windshield time. Like tomorrow I'm driving 2.5 hours. I'll be smiling and driving. So
Okay.
just however I work it in, it's just an ecosystem of gratitude. And I just
Yeah.
say, be the ripple. People miss the connectivity of the voice and inflections, and Zoom calls are even better. That's a Jumanji level 5.
Okay,
That's
thank
awesome.
you.
Good
Thank you.
job.
So there's a question here from Matt, and I'm not sure I understand it, so I'm going to read it, and then Matt, I am going to ask if you'll come on just so that we can so that I can ask you to clarify. Matt asks, how do you deal with people in the business that only use more experience as their way of doing better business than you? I have a feeling it's a great question. I'm just not sure that I understand it totally. So can you go to the where it says react at the bottom of the screen, click on that, and then raise your hand so we can all see you on stage, if you don't mind. Oh, there he is. Hi, Matt. And you're on mute. There you go.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
So the question is that so when I'm a realtor at Sotheby's, and so when you go on listing appointments, I've been doing this for 7 years now and have good sales, but the senior advisors always preach that they have more experience, and that's what we come up against when we're going to listing presentations.
Okay. Well, 7 years sounds like that's pretty good. You've been in it for a while, but are you saying that the prospective customer or client might be thinking 7 years is fine, but there's people with more experience and I trust them more because they have more experience?
Correct.
Okay.
People that have been doing it for 20 plus years.
Got it. Okay, excellent question. There's a couple of ways to deal with this. The first is especially, and you said you're with Sotheby's?
Correct.
And that's a wonderful company. Okay. So what you want to do is make sure there's two different ways. One is just make sure you edify Sotheby's as a team and as a company itself so that you can say, along with me, we've got basically, 630 years of experience And all of us work as a team. So once you come on as my client, you've actually got the entire office of 38 people. I just, by the way, came up with 636 years as a
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
whatever it is that with the people in the office and how much experience. 636 years worth of experience that are going to be out there, working for you. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, and this comes up a lot of times with young financial advisors who, feel a little bit intimidated because they may have just started and somebody who they're talking to is 40 years old, why should they trust a 26, 27-year-old kid, right? And so what I would advise them to do is bring someone along with them, partner with an older, experienced person. And again, you want to really edify them and their experience while they edify you and your energy and how hard you work for your customers and clients. So as Zig Ziglar used to say, take the reason for their not buying and turn it into the reason for their buying. So they're going to have, in either case, they're going to have your energy and enthusiasm and stick-to-itiveness and desire to help them, along with the experience of everybody else at a really great company. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. And what would you say if they're within your own firm?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
They're on your team, they're in-house, they're other Sotheby's brokers that are in the market with you. And that's what they're using to justify why people should list with them and not work with you.
So you're talking about a
I'm not-
competitive sales situation in that case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Something I did early on I started my sales career in my early 20s, and I would be in that situation sometimes. And I would, how I handle it was like Zig Ziglar always said, if you've got an objection that you're going to get pretty consistently, learn how to handle that in the conversation. And so as I was meet with someone, I would tell them if they were older than me and more experienced, and so it was that type, or if I were dealing with people in the marketplace who did what I did but had more experience, I would smile at them and say, I have a question for you, and please feel welcome to tell me no. But the fact that I'm young and excited and enthusiastic and I work very hard, I'm still very young. You won't let the fact that I'm so much younger than you, or maybe young in the marketplace, keep you from making a decision you felt like was best for your company, would you? And they'd say, well, no. And then it's almost like emotionally they were putting their arm around my shoulders and cheering for me at that point. So you might think of some verbiage in that arena that works for you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well,
And my apologies for being so dense that I was not understanding that last
No.
question. Sorry.
no.
In retrospect, very easy to see what you were asking.
And
Yes.
just really quickly, Matt, something I work with real estate agents, because I coach quite a few of them, and Sotheby's is an amazing organization as well. I encourage my agents, financial planners and insurance agents, or anyone actually, I always like to say, would you walk me through your last experience, your last real estate transaction? And seek to understand if they have had a real estate transaction, how did it go? Because however it went, you represent that experience. And a lot of agents don't seek to understand why they even got the opportunity to come into the house. And so I would encourage you to ask more questions. When someone would ask me, hey, I want you to come in and talk to me about my insurance. Well, most people would rather peel their nail beds back than talk about insurance. So I would always say, so Mr. Customer, thank you so much for your time. Why am I here? So making it about the other person and really connecting them with them at a human level instead of throwing up on how much experience you have and making it about them. I had a real estate agent win an award on a listing presentation because we took everything out about her. We did one slide, and the rest of it was about how she was going to serve her customer at her highest self. And when you align with that, you don't have competition because you are uniquely unforgettable in a noisy world screaming how great they are.
Okay, great response. And one more thing before we move on, and we're going to go to Eric next. And since we're at the top of the hour, again, I wanted to let you know we'll stay on with you for as long as you'd like, as long as you have questions. If you do have to go, that's absolutely fine. We'll understand. Make sure that you check out, again, Kathy, if you wouldn't mind, one more time, maybe just putting the saleswiselive.com. We'd love to have you with us on the 29th, 30th, and 31st. Here's one more thing to do, Matt, as well. And then we'll move on to Eric. When you have an ecstatic client, one who absolutely loves you, have them write or record video, audio, it doesn't matter, a wonderful, magnificent testimonial endorsement for you. Okay. And what you want to do, as Jeff said, when you know you have an objection, when you know you're going to have one, make sure you answer it beforehand, right? Or prepare for it beforehand anyway. So in this whatever medium this person does this great endorsement, have them say something like, one thing, when I first spoke with Matt, I was a bit concerned because of his youth. But what I found was that his experience, his hard work, his determination, and his ability to bring in all his team members made this not only an exceptional experience for us, but one in which we monetized our home sale more than we ever thought possible. Okay. Again, assuming that happened and so forth, and that's how you want to frame that. So now, when you have this objection, if you do, you just say, it's a wonderful question, and it's one I can absolutely understand you're having. If I may, I'd love to share with you this, and whether it's letter or you have on your iPad, this these kind words from a client of mine who had that very same question, and now is one of my most valued clients who refers to me constantly. Okay, so all these things, I hope you got some value from these. And during our the SalesWise Live 3-day event, Jeff and I will be doing one module on answering objections, working effectively. We always say you don't overcome an objection. No, you work effectively within the objection to get to the actual root of the objection, and then work through it in partnership with your prospect. Okay. Eric, hello.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having this today.
Our pleasure.
This is my first time on one of these with this group.
Welcome.
I've been a fan of the Go Giver since I transitioned out of ministry into business over a decade ago. I laugh. It's actually sitting here right now. I've read it multiple times. I desire to be the connector. And it's been a theme throughout so I wanted to say thank you for the three of you offering this time. About a year ago, I rolled off out of corporate and do sales optimization training, coaching, consulting with businesses, and it is a grind. And this is just the reminder I needed of the things that I teach, the things that I do, the things that we can do to collaborate, be better. My 3 words coming out of this are gratitude, fusion, and reframe, one from each of you. My question for the 3 of you is, as you look back on 2024, what's the one thing that you learned in the last year that is consequently going to make you that much better here in 2025?
So very quickly, my word of the year for last year was reality. Okay. And I really, and I've been really studying the works of Michael A. Singer, who's he's written several amazing books. The Untethered Soul, Surrender Experiment, but his latest one is called Living Untethered. It's his 3rd one. He outdid himself. It's the only one you even need to get. Living Untethered. And he talked about reality and basically how just about every problem in life is a result of having an issue with what is real, okay, with reality, and not being able to work effectively within it. Then you get people like who wrote Kathy, what's the book I'm reading now that you had bought for me?
Loving What Is by Byron Katie.
By Byron Katie. And she says, when I argue with reality, I lose, but only 100% of the time, you know. And so what I did is I realized how often that I look at the way things should be in my mind, okay? But that to the degree that you live in reality. By the way, living in reality doesn't mean you just accept things as they are and say, "Oh, nothing I can do about it." No. It means you embrace what is first, and then you look for the solutions. But you always operate from a base of truth and reality. So that was my word last year. And that has brought me so much more fulfillment, happiness, joy, and has helped my business immeasurably. It's amazing how that happens. Jeff or Kim, want to go next?
For me, it's something I actually learned from Kim early in 24. And for decades, I was in the insurance industry, and it was my job to make sure that my people were not only opening new client relationships, but maintaining those relationships so they didn't fall off the books. And so I had a process I'll teach about servicing accounts, taking care of your clients. Kim's phrase, it's not your client's job to remember you, but it's your job to become unforgettable, is so huge. I've used that so much with my friends in insurance, with my clients, myself now, and it literally changed it's just a little phraseology, but it changes someone's perception about what it really means to take care of your clients. And so that is the thing I learned that I'm so excited about for 25.
Love that. Thanks,
Kim?
Jeff. Kim?
So my word of the year for 2024 was freedom. I rebranded myself. I dissolved a company and a business in 2023. I let and allowed alignment with my purpose and passion, which my purpose and passion since 2015 has been to help people choose grateful living. Now, I do most of that through the eyes of a business owner and entrepreneur, but I do gratitude challenges for people who are retired. And if it did not align, if it was not divine aligned with my purpose and passion through the filter, I was free to let it go. I was unattached to the outcome. I was divinely aligned, and I just let and allow. Now, I've had a coach since April of 2023 named Scott Hogg, who is a Bob Proctor mentor. And through the transformation work of healing and letting, allowing, and a lot of the things that Bob has been learning from Michael, living untethered, when I become in divine alignment, my life is not always miraculous, but it is much better when I'm not trying to figure out the how. And I let and allow, and I intentionally more than ever nurtured relationships. And I'm going to get 100 times better at it in 2025 because I doubled my income. I doubled my income working less with more intention, using gratitude as the ripple.
I love that. Let and allow. Thank you.
That is wonderful. I
Thank
want
you,
to, before we go to, thank you, Eric. Appreciate you very much. Before we go to Rachel, I want to just suggest a couple things. Kathy was nice enough to put the two books, the Living Untethered by Michael A. Singer. She put the Amazon.com link. And again, I can't recommend that book highly enough. To me, it is the ultimate. To me, it is the best personal development book I've ever read. And anyone who knows me knows I study this stuff like crazy. And it's done more for me as a guy who's about to turn 67 years old. It's done more for me in the last year and a half since I've been studying it than you can imagine. Also, there's a guy who he spoke actually at our last event that we had when it was in person. His name is Richard Weilman. He wrote a wonderful book called 1,100 Proven Ways to Acquire and Keep Clients for Life. I just put the link where you can you can read the first chapter for free. I actually did the forward for it, and I don't do these because I'm not able to take on book manuscripts, but I've been studying this guy for 30 years, and I knew I was going to want to study the book once I got it. And so when he asked me to do, I was like, why is he asking me? But anyway, it was quite an honor that he did. But this book is absolutely amazing. I can't recommend it enough. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
So, thank you for this terrific time that we are spending together. I have a question, Bob, referring back to when you were talking about testimonials and asking your raving fans to write or record
Sure.
a testimonial for you.
Mhm.
I really struggle with doing that.
Sure.
I can't. I know they love my work. They come back, but I need some words. I'm curious what advice you would give to us about how you ask for that referral.
Yeah. And by the way, I truly can understand what you go through with this, because I think what we usually feel is that that person's so busy, we don't want to bother them to do something like that. We don't want to impose upon them and so forth. And so one of the things that we want to maybe shift and reframe a little bit is that if we have really helped that person and added value to their life, there's a really good chance that they would like to do something like this for us. Okay. So when we ask, we want to assume that, and at the same time, always give them an out or back door so that they don't feel pressured to do something like this. Okay. So we might want to say something along the lines of, Dave or Mary, I first of all, I appreciate so much the very kind words you've told me about how much value this service has added to your life. And they say, oh yeah, it really has. Blah, blah. One of the things I find when it comes to referral business and just being able to have a very successful sales conversation is when I have a recommendation from someone like yourself, who's both a friend and valued client who has really found value in our work. I know you're really busy. So if this is not something you have the time to do, or for any reason would rather not, I'll absolutely understand. I'm wondering if you might take a few moments to craft and it could be by, a letter, you do an interview, a video thing, or they can do a bit, whatever. And then you say something like, and if you'd like, I can even sort of draft it a little bit for you so that, it makes it a little bit easier if you'd like. So what you've done is you've asked the question, you've asked it with confidence, while at the same time really giving that person that out or back door so they feel absolutely no pressure, which by the way makes you feel a little better about it, because you don't want to feel as though you're pressuring somebody to do something. So is that helpful?
It is. I have to think about how I reframe it.
Absolutely. Take your time in doing that. Take your time in doing that. Because, all these things that Kim and Jeff and I are talking about are not necessarily things that you say, okay, boom, now I've got it and do it. Sometimes it's writing it out. It's maybe rehearsing it. It's running it past a few people who know you and your personality type and so forth. Because what you want it to do is you really want it to align with your style and with your values and with your feelings. Okay. So sure, by all means, take your time and really frame how you would want to do something like that.
Thank you.
Hey, our pleasure. By the way, Jeff or Kim, was there anything I left out?
I would just say too, is to, when you're always thanking your clients and showing gratitude, you have some fusion points before, after, during, and ongoing, it's easier to ask for that testimonial because they feel appreciated. I just had surgery recently, and before I could get out of the hospital with my oxycodone, they were sending me a survey. Not a very good experience. So where was my wellness call? Oop, didn't get one. So think about that. And ask for the testimonial, like right after a win. Like if I have a client that I help them generate $120,000 in their business, I'm like, well, that might be the time to ask for, kind of a glowing result testimonial that you've helped craft a little bit, like Bob said. So you'll feel better about it if you put some fusion points in there.
Love that. Thank you so much. Dave, my favorite, let's see, author / Chamber of Commerce executive. Hello.
Thanks for that, Bob. One thing I'll add is that if you have events that are going on, have a student intern or have a videographer available to pull people over and let a third party do that on your behalf. Those referral or those recommendations or testimonials can be so powerful if they've got the same background and they've got a theme to it. And let those people talk. If you, especially when you got a large group, not all of them have to participate, but maybe 3 or 4 of them will, and you can create a video. We've created videos on the chamber's behalf in that way. But Kim, I have to call on you for this particular one because it's going to lend itself to this group. I'm pretty unforgettable, right? You wouldn't forget me tomorrow or next week or next month, right?
No.
Okay. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
See, she forgot me already.
Amazing. Yeah, gee.
That's pretty funny.
Some people are just so
I think
fickle.
I'm going to use that in my
That's-
speaking.
The reason it's important for this conversation is she fell for my humor, and I got dad humor written all over me. I'm 62. I've got grandpa humor, and I use that. But my point in even raising my hand is that as a lifelong learner, I'm participating in the program later this month, and I need to sharpen my tools. I need to have the leadership that the 3 of you have to continue that. And if you're on the edge, if you're on the screen and you're on the edge of joining, not joining, whether $1,000 is worth the investment, oh my gosh, there's been $1,000 worth of investment right here for free that we've gotten. How much is that going to mean at the end of the month with 20 hours of the 3 of your time? So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Dave. That's very
Thank you,
kind. Thank you.
Dave.
I appreciate that. By the way, Kathleen Hanover had written in the chat regarding testimonials that it's really important to offer a specific framework for their answers so they don't get blank page syndrome. And this is really important because you want to, first of all, you want to help them to write it, but you don't want what I call to whom it may concern testimonials. You want it to be specific. So where she mentions here, customers like you have mentioned they appreciate X. So what would you say about someone who was thinking about working with, or I like to be able to always monetize, right? So, when they can talk about how through your help, they were able to take their sales from X to Z, or, something that shows a benefit that the person received from working with you. So great point, Kathleen. Samuel Barnett, hello, welcome.
Bob, good to see you again. Thanks for the incredible conversation. As you know, I'm a big proponent of your and John David Mann's book. I've given out over 400 copies. It's had a tremendous impact on my life.
Thank you.
And one of the things that I've found is actually I do a lot of work with the Department of Defense. I'm part of a consulting company that does contracting with the federal government, mostly with the Department of Defense. And as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of restriction around how you engage with the federal government. It's not like on the private sector where obviously some of these conversations maybe naturally could flow a little bit, or you have the opportunity to engage in the same manner. There is definitely a lot more red tape that you have to go through. But what I found is the Go Giver is such an icebreaker because it goes into the thought process of wanting to be there to bring value to that individual and not looking at it as a transaction. But how do you bring value? How do you create value for that person that you're interacting with? Whether they're a major, a general, a captain, a lieutenant colonel, I've had great success doing that. My question becomes, as I start my own consulting company, a woman-owned small business in my wife's name, I'm going to be looking to do more work with the federal government. And some of the information that was shared today is going to be critical for us being successful. This is going to be our first year as an LLC. And my question is, have you looking at specifically dealing in maybe more restrictive environments or where there's more regulation or compliance that you have to be aware of as you do your networking or as you network? Are there certain recommendations you would make to an entrepreneur that's starting a company in that type of environment? And is there anything different that I should be looking at? Thank
Well,
you.
first, congratulations for starting that business. That's wonderful. So yeah, it's sort of, it reminds me of the joke in Ghostbusters when they were about to get fired from the college that they worked for, and Dan Aykroyd's character said, "Hey, I've been in the private sector before. They expect results." So you are dealing with, so in dealing with government, you're dealing with a different type of body. I mean, you are dealing with a bureaucracy. And so there are going to be those rules, regulations, and different points that you're going to have to go with. There's no question. And still, it's still to that degree that you can create relationships that is going to be the difference maker, you know? And the toughest thing is, when they say something like, well, just put in a bid. We're just taking bids. Well, okay. So if they're looking for the cheapest thing and you're not the cheapest thing, which hopefully you're not, okay, what you've got to do is you've got to creatively find a way in where you can at least speak with someone who can give you some ideas of what they're really looking for, so that you can find ways that within your proposal, if you will, to be able to communicate value that others who don't have that same information are able to communicate. But yeah, when dealing with the government, it's always there's always that catch that sometimes it just, it is what it is, and you've got to go through the thing. But to the degree that you can form a relationship, that you can form relationships and utilize those relationships to be able to speak to somebody and get that additional information, that's what's going to distinguish you. Jeff or Kim?
With that one, again, I've never been exactly in your shoes, so you have to take that into account with this answer. But when I'm teaching the process of priming the pump before you even ask for that first meeting, we're establishing a relationship with an individual when we do that, and we're focused on how their world gets better. So that part may very well still be okay, that you're establishing that contact, you're sending them a note, you're doing something like that just makes you stand out a little bit more. So maybe they will be the contact that gives you that information. And it's all about the relationship with the individual, even though it's a government entity.
I'm just gonna ditto that, because in the insurance business, you have a rebating. I'm licensed, you can only do so much. But a valuable asset on this call is my really good friend Kathleen Dugan, and she's been in defense for 18 years, and I highly suggest you connect with her. I've known her, love her. She's a customer friend, all the above. But again, it's what relationships will never go out of style. That's what I'll say. 100 years from now, when I'm not here, relationships are what really run the world. And it's really about the relationships. So.
Kathleen also commented on her in the chat. So thank you, Kathleen, for those comments. Appreciate you very much. And it looks like our last, but absolutely not least, person is Miss Judy Hayes. Hello, Judy.
This is what a way to just ease back in. I've been on a 2-week sojourn, and this is my first entry back into the real world.
Cool.
2 points, or 1 point to share that really is a takeaway for me, is that when we lead with our solution, we're selling, and nobody wants to be sold to. But when we lead with value, we are building a relationship. And I think that comes down to it, because when I look back and the people that I work with, it always comes down to, well, how'd you get that project? Or how'd you get, somebody knew me, or somebody referred me. So it's the relationship. So I appreciate that. And on the note of people asking for testimonials, I am terrified to ask somebody for something because I don't want it to be rejected. However, I give a lot of workshops and I do a lot of LinkedIn profile rewrites. I have found from these 2 things is when I'm doing a workshop, at the end of it, I ask people for feedback. I use Talkadot, where they can, write some things. And if they've said something and I can grab a soundbite from them, then I'll reach back out and I'll say, and I do it through LinkedIn, so then I can put it on all my other platforms, but just say, I really appreciate you saying that. Would you mind if I quote this? And I'll copy and paste what they said. And I think the easier you make it for people want to do things. But if you do, And then the other thing is,
We've done that, and it's a great idea. I've never had anybody say no. They've always said, "Oh yeah, absolutely, please do that." Yeah, that's a
for that.
great point. Thank you.
And the other one is when I do a profile rewrite, I do maybe 1 or 2 complimentary ones a month, just as my pay it forward to the community. And I ask people, after they go through it, they're like, oh my gosh, wow, fireworks go off. And I said, well, can you tell me what was one thing that helped change your point of view after this exercise, or how are you going to approach LinkedIn differently after this? And they say that, would you mind? I said, I've set a goal for myself to have at least 1 new recommendation a month or whatever. And would you mind if we put that and you post it on my profile? I'll send you the link. And like you said, I said, let's do it as a pay it forward, and usually they do. Not that they feel indebted. If they don't, they don't. But, it's just a nice way, again, of if I feel that, it's something that can help somebody else and they're willing to put it forward, that's all the better. So thank you for setting some very, very positive intentions. Go givers, I love you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Well, this has been so much fun, and just want to thank everybody all of you who, wow, stayed around, because still have a lot of people here. So thank you. So glad to have you with us. If you'd like to join us on the 29th, 30th, and 31st, we'd be delighted to have you. Meanwhile, I wish for you all an absolutely wonderful and stratospherically successful 2025.